I realized my own family wanted me locked away, drugged, silenced, erased, while they carved up my life's work like a Thanksgiving turkey. What they didn't know was that I already knew every part of their plan. And that night, in the middle of our historic Kentucky estate, I recorded everything they said, every poisonous word, before watching them get hauled out in handcuffs. And hey, if you've ever been underestimated or betrayed by the people who are supposed to love you, hit that subscribe button. Like the video, drop a comment with the city you're watching from, and settle in. This is a story where justice isn't just served, it's beautifully, ruthlessly executed. Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be warm, familiar, comforting. But that night, the air around the heavy oak table felt suffocating, so quiet it buzzed. My family's practice smiles looked like masks stretched too tightly across hollow faces. And I, Claudia Reynolds, a 38-year-old woman who built her life from the mud up, realized I was eating with strangers who shared my blood but none of my humanity. I knew they were planning something. I just didn't know how far they'd go, until I found out. So when I stood up and excused myself from the table, I left my phone face down, the voice recorder running. I didn't need them to confess to me. I just needed them to confess where a microphone could hear. But before we get to that recording, you need to know how we got here. I grew up in a historic Kentucky estate, crumbling bricks pretending to be wealth, dust pretending to be tradition. My parents, Franklin and Miriam, lived in a delusion that our last name carried enough prestige to keep the lights on. It didn't. While they waltzed around country clubs in thrifted Chanel and refurbished pearls, I sat at the kitchen table juggling overdue bills. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an employee, a maid, a human shield against bankruptcy. And then there was my brother, Grant. Grant, the heir to nothing, but treated like he owned the world. Grant, who crashed cars and got new ones. Grant, whose failures were youthful mistakes, while my accomplishments were unladylike ambitions. He was their golden child. I was their workhorse. So, I built something they couldn't touch. Straight out of high school, I started a logistics company specializing in bourbon transport. While my mother complained my clothes smelled like gasoline, I was negotiating contracts with distilleries who laughed at me before they signed six-figure deals. I built my empire with grease-stained hands. But my family saw none of that. What they did see was my growing bank account. And that's when the feeding frenzy began. It started 3 years ago when Grant somehow racked up over $80,000 in gambling debt, money he owed to people who didn't send polite reminders. My father called me into his study, not to explain, not to apologize, but to command. He slid the invoice across the desk with shaking hands. Not because he was ashamed, because he expected me to fix it. And I did. I paid it. Not for Grant, but for myself, because I didn't want violent men showing up at my parents' home. Grant didn't even thank me. He just smirked, like I'd done exactly what he knew I would. That's when I realized I wasn't their daughter. I was their bank. From then on, every dinner invitation came with a bill I was expected to cover. Every praise they gave Grant was paid for with my labor. And every bit of resentment they had toward their own failures was redirected at the only person in the room actually succeeding. But nothing prepared me for the real betrayal. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I arrived early at the estate with a rare bottle of bourbon for their anniversary. But the gravel driveway was nearly empty, except for one car. A sleek black sedan. Our family lawyer, Mr. Hartman. His fees were so outrageous, he billed you for opening his own briefcase. His presence on a Friday night was not a good sign. I slipped through the side entrance, expecting party prep. Instead, silence.
No cáteres.
No music. Just the murmur of frantic voices coming from my father's study. The door was cracked open. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. And what I heard hollowed me out. My father's voice. We need to move quickly. If she keeps control of the accounts, we lose the house next month. My stomach twisted. They were broke again. Of course. But then Grant spoke. Relax, Dad. Once she's in the psych ward, I can sell that boring logistics company of hers. My heart stopped. Locked away? Psych ward? Then my mother. The doctor is ready to sign the papers. She just needs a few more doses of the herbal tea to show symptoms.
The tea.
The bitter tea she'd insisted I drink for stress. My legs nearly gave out. They weren't trying to guilt me. They weren't trying to control me. They were trying to erase me. I got out quietly, drove home in a blur, and cried harder than I had in years. But somewhere in that tidal wave of betrayal, something inside me hardened. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. Back in my office, I handed a thick folder to my assistant, Sarah, the one person who had been ride or die since day one. We tore through financial records, and it didn't take long.
Unforgettable signature.
$200,000 removed. My father's shaky attempt to mimic my handwriting. They were using my money to fund the lawyer drafting papers to institutionalize me. But that was just the financial side. Next came the tea. A toxicology lab analyzed it, and the results made us both go pale. It was laced with a sedative known to induce confusion, paranoia, lethargy, symptoms perfect for a psychiatric diagnosis. My mother wasn't soothing me. She was drugging me. Sarah grabbed my arm. Claudia, we need to go to the police. This is attempted poisoning. But I shook my head. A report could be spun. An accusation could be denied. I needed their voices, their words, their arrogance, on tape. So I played weak. I played confused. I played exactly what they wanted me to be. 2 days later, I invited Miriam to lunch. I showed up late, makeup creating shadows under my eyes, hands shaking. She watched me like a predator evaluating prey. Her opening line? "You look terrible. Maybe Grant should take over your company for a while." I accidentally knocked over a glass, water spilling everywhere. She smiled as if she'd just won a prize pig at a county fair. Then Grant called. On speakerphone. "Mom, tell her to sign the power of attorney today. I need access to the safe." I nearly choked on my own rage. But I held character. I said I was thinking of stepping back. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was tired. My mother lit up like a Christmas tree. "Wonderful, darling. Just sign the papers at Thanksgiving dinner. Then you can rest somewhere quiet."
Right.
A padded room. She walked out happy as a child, completely unaware I'd recorded every word. The trap was set. Sarah and I turned my office into a war room. We compiled forged signatures, bank fraud, toxicology reports, phone logs, audio recordings, Grant's threatening voicemails. The district attorney didn't hesitate. He wanted them all. By Wednesday night, the arrest warrants were ready. All that was left was Thanksgiving. The dining room gleamed.
Candlelight.
Silverware. Expensive wine I'd bought for people who didn't deserve tap water. My parents smiled at me like I was a turkey they couldn't wait to carve open. I played along. They ate. They sipped wine. They whispered to each other, thinking I couldn't see. When dessert plates were cleared, I stood.
Slowly. Calmly.
I picked up my phone and connected it to the TV. The first voice on the speakers was Franklin's. "If she controls the accounts, we lose the house." Then Grant. "Once she's locked up, I'll sell her company." Then Miriam. "Just a few more doses of the tea." Their forks froze midair. Faces drained white. My father exploded first. "Turn that off. How dare you spy on your own family?"
I didn't respond.
Instead, I dropped the folder of evidence onto the table like a verdict. And then, sirens. Blue and red lights flooded through the windows. Grant tried to run. Officers blocked him. He screamed at me, "You ruined my life." I didn't move. I just watched. My mother faked a heart attack, collapsing dramatically. Paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher, handcuffed. My father pleaded, cursed, threatened, but the officers didn't even flinch. They were all taken away. Every single one. 6 months later, the courtroom was packed with the same people who used to sip my parents' overpriced bourbon. Now, they watched them fall. 15 years for my parents, grand larceny, medical fraud, conspiracy. 20 years for Grant, fraud, extortion, connections to violent bettors. They looked so small, so breakable. And I felt nothing. I sold the estate, auctioned everything inside. Closed my company, not in defeat, but in liberation. Then I moved across the country to a small, modern house perched above the Pacific Ocean. The waves don't judge. They just exist. And for the first time, so do I. I wake up without dread, without manipulation, without poison, literal or emotional. I finally learned that blood isn't loyalty. Family isn't forced. And freedom is worth burning every bridge built on pain. Family should be a harbor, not a battlefield. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who sharpen their knives behind your back. Walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. If you found this story powerful or relatable, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deeply satisfying tales of justice, and tell me in the comments, what's the most shocking betrayal you've ever overcome? I read every single one. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you have the power to choose your own family. If you'd like, I can also create a shorter or a longer version, add background music cues, or adjust the tone to be darker, funnier, or more dramatic.